Karyn Bryant for MMA H.E.A.T. I'm here with UFC President Dana White, who is not a Fedor fan. Don't think he's the best ever, huh?
It's not that I'm not a Fedor fan. It's not one way or the other. You know, you had all these media guys talking about that this guy was the best heavyweight, pound for pound in the world, best heavyweight in the world. And the media, you know, the way that the media reacted to the whole Fedor myth was pretty embarrassing. It's a joke.
Well, does Hendo have a job with you, though, then?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, the thing is, I always liked Dan Henderson. You know, Dan Henderson and I just couldn't come to a deal. So we'll see what happens now if Hendo and I can come to a deal. I respect Dan Henderson, always have. You know, our last, I wouldn't call it a falling out, but the end of our last negotiation was I had, you know, Dan Henderson asking for money that I thought was insane, and we couldn't come to terms.
My favorite moment of the presser today was, "Hello, everyone. I'm Sexyama." Okay.
He's so awesome, man. Right. Not only his personality, but I love to watch this guy fight. He's won 3 Fight of the Night awards in his last 3 fights, and stylistically against Vitor Belfort. You know, Vitor gets into these things where he comes out and freezes and like moves around and doesn't throw his hands. That's not going to happen against Akiyama. Akiyama is going to be in his face and going after him the whole time, which is going to force Vitor to fight, which should be a very exciting fight. I honestly believe that they could win Fight of the Night Saturday.
Well, and it's so interesting because the interview we did with Akiyama yesterday, all the comments are like, "Oh my God, I love this guy. He's a warrior. He's this, he's that." Yet he's lost 2 in a row. Usually somebody in that position is not well poised to keep going if they lose again. So what happens to him when, in fact, he actually carries sort of the mantle for Japanese fighters, Asian fighters here in the States and in the UFC, and there's a lot riding on his success.
There's one thing that I learned in early on when we started to build this business is that, you know, because of boxing, what boxing had become, where you got these 2 multi-millionaires who step into the ring and would do everything they could to avoid a fight instead of fighting so they could get on to the next payday. It was with Arturo Gatti that I started to see this guy kept signing deal after deal after deal with HBO, that people like warriors, people like guys who go in and really put on a fight. When you go out on Saturday night and you buy a ticket to the UFC or you buy your pay-per-view, you want to see some fights. When Akiyama steps into the octagon, he puts on fights. And I think that's why people like him and respect him, and that's why I do. And I expect a great showing from him on Saturday.
Was there a certain element of, let's give Vitor another fight right away because of the way he lost to Anderson, because he didn't even really get to fight in that? Is that why he got to fight again so quickly?
Well, no, he was ready to go. I mean, he had to take his suspension. You know, after you get knocked out, you're on suspension. And then when his suspension was up, you know, I think he was very disappointed in what happened in that fight, and he was ready to get back in there as fast as he could.
I know Mike Pyle has said it's his time. He's the only guy who's beaten John Fitch. Where is John Fitch in the welterweight picture? This guy who, you know, when people talk about the linear, you know, who's due for a shot, he hasn't gotten it. Mike is coming up. You've got the 2 Jakes about to fight each other. The welterweight picture is looking pretty great right now. But where does John Fitch fit in? Where does Mike go if he wins tomorrow?
Well, John Fitch did get his shot. I mean, John Fitch fought George St. Pierre, and it was a one-sided affair. Let's just say that. Fitch is definitely one of the best guys out there. He's in a spot now. He was injured, had to pull out of the fight. Fought BJ Penn to a draw. You know, so you know, he's had his shot at George St. Pierre. It's not like he went in and fought George St. Pierre and it was a barn burner and everybody, you know, some people think he won, some people think, you know. So John Fitch is definitely one of the best in the world in that division, but he's injured. He just drew BJ Penn. Yeah. So we'll see.
Well, and it also looks like you're trying to groom some of the younger guys. So you've got Rory, you've got Jake Ellenberger, who I think is coming up nicely. Seems like the welterweight, the new crop is coming up.
Well, that division is so stacked. I mean, the 170-pound division is probably the toughest division out there, if not the 55.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about Tito for a second. What kind of response did you get after that fight? Because it is kind of amazing how people went back to going, you know what, I thought he was kind of a jerk, and now I'm a fan again. How did you get, what kind of response did you get, and how did you feel after that whole fight?
Well, this new Tito Ortiz is kind of tripping me out. You know, I've been dealing with a different Tito over the last however many years it's been, but I think that's why Tito's becoming so popular again. Obviously, going into that fight, it was like Tito was being sent into his execution. He was going to get killed by Bader, and that was going to be it with Tito. And especially when, you know, they know that I was going to cut him, and Tito said, "Give me another shot." And we did. And he goes in there and he beats Bader. And, you know, the guy who many believed was the #7 ranked light heavyweight in the world. And now the fact that Tito accepts this fight with Rashad, the #1 guy, I think people respect that. And Tito hasn't been as popular since 2003.
And what are you expecting from Rashad? This is the last question, but I mean, it's been a long time. We haven't seen him, but you're saying he's still rightfully #1 if he wins on Saturday night. Does he seem different to you after everything he's been through in the last year and a half?
Yeah, he's changed because, you know, it was very public, the decision that he made to sit out and wait for Shogun. Public in that I thought that was ridiculous, and he thought it was the right thing to do. Now what happens is he waits for Shogun, he gets injured before the Shogun fight, and now every guy he's supposed to fight is injured, and he hasn't fought in a year and a half. And then this opponent gets injured, and thank God Tito jumps in, but, you know, he's had a real string of bad luck, and he needs to get back in there. I think that's another thing that makes this fight so interesting. You know, Rashad is the #1 ranked guy in the world, but he hasn't fought in a year and a half. Tito's coming off a great camp, a great fight that he took no damage in, and jumped right back into camp. So, interesting.
Well, Rashad has told us, you know, maybe for 30 seconds it might be a little rough, but he never forgot to fight. That's what he said.
Right. No, it's true. I don't disagree with that either, but let me tell you what, ring rust is a real thing. You can look like a world beater in the gym and everything else, but a fight is completely different.
All right. Well, it's going to be a good time on Saturday night, I'm sure, but thanks, Dana.
All right.
Cool. See you.
Yeah.
Thank you.